Hi, it's Tash. Welcome to Tash's Library. Today's video is going to be looking at my top 10 fantasy and science fiction novels of the year so far. Now, I know this is kind of late. I probably should have done it mid-year, but you know what? I feel like doing this, so I'm going to do it. Now, I haven't ranked them, mainly because it's too hard to rank them, and I will rank my favorite videos for the end of the year, and then maybe some of these will make it in there and will give me time to think about where they sit. So, in no particular order, I'm going to start with a fairly recent read, which is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So this follows a young woman, Cassiopeia, who inadvertently releases the Mayan god of death, who then takes her out of her humdrum life and on a whirlwind adventure across Mexico and the Mayan underworld. This was such a good read, and this has made me really want to read more of Silvia Moreno Garcia. I absolutely adored this book, and I absolutely adored her writing. It is beautifully written. It's got a cool exploration of Mayan mythology. The descriptions of setting are so evocative. The main character is a really strong female character, which I find quite rare sometimes, and I really enjoyed that. And it's got a wonderful exploration of duty, the idea of selfish versus altruistic motivations, and the concept of free will. Another book I absolutely adored that I read fairly recently is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Now, this is more of a novella, and it's a retelling of The House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. It follows Alex, a retired soldier who visits old friends on their estate, but things are not as they seem in this isolated and spooky home. The characters in this are absolutely delightful, particularly the supporting characters. I love them. There is a masterful execution which created this pervasive sense of unease. T. Kingfisher was incredible at doing this. I felt as unsettled as when I read The House of Usher. I loved the gradual unveiling of the truth and a really cool use of pronouns as well. A middle grade has made it onto my list. This is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This was incredible. I loved it. It is one of my favorite middle grade novels of all time. It's the first in a series, and it follows Amari, who believes that her missing brother Quentin is still alive. She then receives this briefcase that gives her an opportunity to investigate his disappearance and join the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. The characters in this were such fun. Magical school setting, what can I say? Everyone loves a magical school setting, at least I do. The interplay between the real and imagined or unimagined worlds, the magical world, is so interesting. And moreover, the magical system is so unique and well developed. If you haven't read Amari, get onto it. Fourth book I'm going to talk about, I've spoken about at length before. This is The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu, the second book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy. This is a hard sci-fi book which begins with the three-body problem. Now, the three-body problem looks at the Cultural Revolution initially in China and a secret government project that is scanning the skies. I loved the hard sci-fi in this. I loved the interplay between the possible and impossible in science. I loved the unpredictable, wacky plots. My jaw was dropping every now and then. I was like, what? That couldn't possibly happen. It is a very plot-driven book, so it's not character-driven, so if that puts you off, maybe this isn't the book for you, but it's a very engaging read, I felt. I could not put these books down. Having said that, The Dark Forest was my favorite. It's the second one, and it just edges out the other two because I found some bits of the first one a little bit too long, and the third book is a little too sweeping. I found the ending a little fast, but I still love them. They're all 5-star reads. But Dark Forest, incredible. Another book that's one of my favorites, no surprise here at all, is The Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruocchio. This is the first in the Sun Eater series, and it's pretty much space opera meets epic fantasy. It follows Hadrian Marlowe, who's renowned as the killer of suns, the killer of billions, and he's revered by some and despised by others. This first book starts with his earlier life, and it looks at how he desires an escape from his overbearing father and a way of finding his own way in the universe. The prose in this is superb. There's also outstanding characterization and world building. I could picture it all. It was incredible. It was sweeping. It was so unique. The plot is epic and highly unpredictable. And I loved how it explored the themes of class and survival, heresy, religious persecution, and prejudice. This is a deep novel. One I haven't spoken about as much, but I absolutely loved, was Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. This is the first in the Illborn saga. It follows four young men and women who develop supernatural abilities in a medieval-inspired world that is plagued by religious persecution and war. I loved the different POVs. They were all very distinct, very nuanced. Some were morally grey, some were incredibly good, and some I despised. Their motivations are so clearly explored, and the plot is intriguing and captivating, despite it being predominantly character-driven. The world building is intricate and gorgeous, great pacing, and themes that are explored include piety, prejudice, and religious persecution. This was a beautiful book, even though it does tend towards the more brutal and dark in fantasy. Another sci-fi I loved was Blake Crouch, who I also believe is going to be a favorite author in future. This is a sci-fi thriller following Jason, who's knocked out while walking home one night. He then wakes to find that his life is markedly different. He is not married to his wife, his son was never born, and he is a celebrated physicist instead of a physics professor. Confusing and scary, right? I love the exploration of deep scientific ideas in this. It blew my mind, and sometimes I had to put it aside to just kind of try and get my head around it. The premise was so fascinating. It just made me think. I really enjoyed following this story. It was unputdownable, highly engaging, and the characters were really likable, and I felt really invested in the outcomes for them. One that I read really early on in the year was City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the first in the Divine Cities trilogy that looks at the city of Bulakov, who has killed its gods and its history has been censored. However, when Shara, a young diplomat, is sent to investigate a murder, she starts to realize that the gods may not be as dead after all. The world building here was so imaginative and unique. Wonderful characters, very nuanced, very morally grey at times, and has one of my favorite supporting characters. And the plot is just really intriguing, and this one has sat with me. I really liked it. It just felt unique. It felt different when I was reading it, and it's still in my head, so I guess it's a favorite. Another one I read early on in the year was one of Brandon Sanderson's secret projects. This is Tress of the Emerald Sea. Follows Tress, who leaves the safety of her island to find her missing love across an ocean of deadly spores. The crafting of the characters here was so superbly done that it left me really interested in them and their fate. Hard magic system again. Brandon Sanderson has done it again. This was fascinating, really well explained, and a little bit terrifying, I thought. However, This was still quite a light-hearted book, in the vein of The Princess Diaries. Thought-provoking philosophy was infused in it, as well as humor. Also, strong feminine power in this. Tress is a kick-ass character, and the world building ultimately is just unique. I mean, Brandon Sanderson does great world building. And finally, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first in the Great Cities duology. I have not yet read the second one because I'm waiting for it to be released in mass paperback to match my copy of The City We Became. It looks at New York, who is, and I say who because New York is a living city in this, with each of her boroughs possessing a very uniquely flavored soul. And when she finds herself under threat, she calls on 5 New Yorkers to save her. The writing in this was gorgeous. The characterization of the different boroughs was superb, and I don't even really know New York. And I still felt its character through the writing, through the way the different characters portrayed themselves, how they behaved, how they spoke, which is so masterfully done. Plot is intriguing, addictive. I could not put this down. I was so keen to find out what was going to happen. There was an excellent exploration of the themes of belonging and place, of racism, prejudice, and the conflict between selfishness and altruism. This was a gorgeous book. The first chapter or so is hard to get into, but once you do get through that, it was incredible. Highly recommend. And that's it. They're my top 10 fantasy and science fiction books of the year so far. Let's see which ones stay on the list, and hopefully I have more really excellent 5-star reads that will compete for a spot on this list. Thank you for watching, and until I see you next time, take care.